All good? All right. Board of Aldermen work session is now called to order. First item on the agenda is the assessed valuation and bond considerations. Mr. Larson.
Before Stephen starts, I just want to, can you hear me okay? Okay. Before Stephen starts, I did want to just provide a brief introduction here. The board had pretty in-depth discussions in May related to the bonding capacity and this debt analysis. We wanted to make sure and remind you of that information and be able to ensure that everyone has that information. This is also the, I believe, third or fourth time since May that we've talked about ballot initiatives. We need to continue to have that discussion to ensure that we're clear on how the board wants to move forward. There are a lot of pieces of information that need to be gathered in order to be able to move forward should the board so desire with any ballot initiatives. We also need to know what additional information the board may need. So this evening, we're looking for a lot of information and direction from the board. And we'll start with Stephen's last presentation to the board. And this is information that was presented to you all in the retreat, at the retreat in May, with revised information based on assessed valuation. So Stephen.
Yeah. Pull this up a little bit. Is it on?
Yeah.
You hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Oh, you know,
yeah.
You know, Greenwood's a one-man show. You better learn how to run the microphone.
I better be the IT director all in one.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But
microphone, audio, visual. It's all going to be you, man.
I know, right? But yeah, it is a little bittersweet coming up here for the last presentation. I just want to say I've so much enjoyed working with the City of Smithville Board of Aldermen and appreciate all the hard work that you guys do. And hope we've done some good work in the budget and finance department over the years, and the city's on a great track, and just excited to get to work with you all during that time. So with that, I'll launch into this presentation. I'm going to give you an update on our on the city's general obligation bonding capacity. And we've talked about this before in some past board retreats. And so I like to just start kind of with a brief overview of how we establish the city's debt limits. And if you look up on the TV screen, it really starts with thinking about our debt capacity in the sense of two different buckets where we can draw upon to receive general obligation proceeds. The first bucket that's available to the City of Smithville is what I would call it a general purpose debt bucket. And the limit on this bucket for general purpose is limited to 10% of the city's assessed valuation. The debt that lands in this bucket and can be used in this bucket can be used for any municipal purpose. There is no limit on this. And to give you a sense right now, we do have some general obligation debt that's issued, but you'll see it falls into bucket 2. We'll see in a couple slides here. So in bucket 1, we don't have any debt issued in this. So it's all available for use. The second bucket that is available to us is reserved for specific municipal uses. It provides the city with another 10% of our assessed valuation. And in this bucket, the debt proceeds can be used for acquiring right-of-ways, constructing and improving streets, improving our storm sewer systems, or purchasing, construction, waterworks, electric. And City of Smithville doesn't operate electric, but so on and so forth. We do have some debt that is issued in this bucket too, and I'll talk about that here in a second, what that is. So this next slide, there's 3 different things going on here. On the bottom of the slide, you've got the first and second bucket. The first bucket being your orange, the second one, the gray, and then the blue line is the city's assessed valuation. And so it's tracking the growth in assessed valuation over the last 5 years from tax year 2018 to 2023. So you can see almost 5 years ago, the assessed valuation was at $163 million. And since then, it's grown to $273 million. So with that growth in the assessed valuation, the city's ability to issue debt, at least the limit, has also grown over time. And you can see the rise in the orange and the gray slowly ticking up over the years as it takes up 10% of assessed valuation. So here's the orange bucket and what's available to us for general purpose. Like I said, it's gone up over time as the assessed valuation has increased. And you can see here we have nearly $27.4 million in general purpose capacity available to us. And then just so you're aware, on the second bucket, the limit is the same as the first bucket, almost 27.4, but the capacity itself is reduced. The reason the capacity is reduced is because we have some previously issued debt, and I think some of you were probably on that board when that was issued. It was our Series 2018 and 2019 bonds for streetscape, South Commercial sidewalks. The list is up there on the bullet. So what you do is you take your limit and you subtract the outstanding debt that was issued, which is in your yellow, and then that gives you what your actual capacity is for this bucket, which is 22.2 million. So on one bucket, general purpose, and on the other, a specific use. Together, you'd marry them up, and that would give us a total capacity, but it's different uses. So really, for the purpose of this discussion, I'll turn it over to Cynthia now. She's going to talk about ballot initiatives, but I know what's important in terms of our potential debt issuance is that capacity in the general purpose bucket, which gives us 27.4 million in issuance capacity.
And I want to make sure that the board also recognizes that 273 million and change of total assessed valuation, that's based on the assessor's appraisals of public parks, city property in 2023. That's what they certified and got to us. And that's how we set our mill levy rate that has to be set and to the county by the last day of October. So you all set the tax rate, and based on that tax rate is what then gets assessed on property tax bills. And that's what the 2023 tax amount those amounts will be what are due in January of 2024. Does that make sense? And that's what funds our budget. The general mill levy, we can't increase without going to the voters, and we actually reduce the general fund or the general mill levy based on growth in assessed valuation. We can absorb or take the growth in CPI or COLA, but we can't absorb that new growth. Questions on that? When we spoke in May, that debt capacity, 10% of assessed valuation, was about 23.5 million. Is that about right? It was under 24 million, Stephen.
Yep.
So that our total assessed valuation is increased. And so that debt capacity has increased to 27.4 million.
Yeah, and as a reminder, one of the things we discussed a couple of years ago on the bucket 2 was the raw water pump station, which we ended up being able to pay cash for, which is also an encumbrance we're moving over because we still haven't got all the bills correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct.
Using ARPA funds for the raw water pump station.
We're using ARPA funds, but we continue to receive bills on that project because there have been significant delays in getting materials in and completing that. So that's on the agenda for this evening as part of that budget amendment. Thank you for that clarification, Mayor. Just also to outline, as the mayor said, we looked at the potential of debt issuance for some of the water and sewer projects. We continue to look at debt issuance for the 144th Street pump station project that we'll be looking at going out to bid later this year. Those we will be issuing COPs, certificates of participation, and those are another debt financing source that are funded solely through the revenues from water and sewer. And as we get closer to that, we'll walk through that with you all as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the work that Stephen, you've done over the years, making sure we can have cash to roll these projects and not just going out for debt to go out for debt. So, as we found out, construction timelines take a little longer than they tell us.
Well, and construction timelines lately
Yeah.
have taken a lot longer. We still, I think we're hopefully on the downward slide of some of the impact of 2020 and beyond on supply chain issues, but it's had a significant impact on the raw water pump station, getting those materials in. So I'll move on to discussion of ballot initiatives. As I mentioned earlier at the retreat in May, we did talk about strategic planning, comprehensive planning, Parks and Recreation master planning, looking at all the needs that we have in the community in the coming years, and ways to be able to fund those needs. We have ongoing maintenance needs that we try to address through the existing budget, and then needs to address some of our new growth as well. But as the community grows, those maintenance needs also grow. Through discussion in May, and then the board reiterated this summer a desire to go to the voters, for ballot question in November of this year for a public safety sales tax, half-cent sales tax that would have funded the addition of 2 police officers, implementation of an animal control program, and costs associated with equipment and vehicles for the police department. That those funds would enhance and not supplant any existing revenues or resources going toward the police department. As a reminder, a half-cent sales tax generates about $700,000 annually. And so that went to the voters on November 7th. And as you all are aware, a simple majority was required, and that failed with slightly under that margin. The enabling legislation that was adopted last year that outlined our ability to, or granted us the ability to go to the voters for a public safety sales tax, includes language that outlines that no proposal pursuant to a question shall go to the voters no sooner than 12 months from the date of the last election. So we have to wait a minimum of a year for taking a public safety sales tax back to the voters. So the earliest date that another election could be held on public safety sales tax would be April 2025. We've outlined in the memo some questions for the board. I don't know if you want to discuss these individually or kind of as we go through the general questions later. Should I continue on the other items that you all have talked about, or do we want to talk specifically about public safety sales tax?
I think that's a decision to be made by the future board at that time. So,
okay.
Anybody disagree with that? All right, great.
Okay.
So, next.
Okay, very good. GO bond issuance for public safety and operations, as outlined in the memo, in 2022, early 2022, we received presentations from the architects that did work both looking at police facility needs as well as public works and parks maintenance needs. Police facility needs, as is outlined in the memo and as we've discussed, the police currently occupies about 2,700 square feet here in City Hall with some ancillary storage space here outside of City Hall that houses all of the operations of the police department. That's about the size of a larger single family home for our officers and the functions that operate out of City Hall. We did worked with an architect, and the information that was presented in 2022 looked at growth as the community grows and needs for the police department. So for a 20 to 30 year span to allow that growth in the department. Estimates at that point in time were just under $16 million to construct a facility and did not include any animal control facility in that. Working with Trainer Architects, who were the architects that did that initial space needs study, that current estimate based on projects they're seeing and what they've seen in cost escalation, no change to the scope for the base level police building would be $18.8 million. We've, through the past year, had a lot of discussion with regard to the Pound, which is located at the street facility on the site where the water treatment plant is located. With the expansion of the water treatment plant, which is also anticipated and was in the water master plan that was completed in 2017 or 18, and identifying a need for expansion to meet to serve the needs of the community, That expansion would basically move or create the need to move the pound. We've had discussions that a standalone facility located with the police department could probably cost about, an estimate is about $700,000. Those are current dollars. And that is just based on square footage costs for a basic facility. And Trainer provided those estimates to the chief. So one of the things staff has talked about, that $18.5 million plus the $700,000 really includes the scope that had been previously discussed with no reductions to that. One of the things, as I noted earlier, the work that was completed by Trainer in 2022 looked at needs into the future. And it was based on facility needs, not on budgeted resources. So it also included construction of a community room, and the construction of that facility anticipated, or that part of the building anticipated building it to FEMA specifications so that it could be used as a public shelter in event of an emergency. And because it would be built to those specifications, it could also serve as an emergency operations center for the community in the event of some type of a disaster. We don't currently have something that's built to those specifications here to operate out of. Excuse me. There is a fitness facility within the building, and the finishes I would not classify as high end, but as those built to withstand use by pretty intense use. Our police may come in the middle of the night from a scene covered in rain, wet, mud, those sorts of things. So the finishes took that into consideration. There are some reductions to costs that could occur there. It'd be kind of trimming around the edges there. So as I indicated, we could also go back to Trainer and ask that we develop a budget and a number that we'd be looking at, and look at a scaled back design based on a budget as opposed to needs for 20 years down the road. Questions on police?
I don't have questions, but I've got a comment. From past experience, I guess, with the spouse that was in law enforcement, I know that a facility was built in Platte County for future needs. And when it came time for those future needs, they found out that the building that they had done for the future needs didn't comply at that point in time. So I don't know. I can understand going out and looking at what's needed in 20 or 30 years, but I think it's going to probably change a whole lot before that time would happen. So I don't know if this company could look at something that could benefit us more, maybe for like 15 years instead of going out 30 years.
And Chief, when they designed the footprint, they have space for growth in there as well, correct? Like we have some extra land that we can use in that footprint. Okay. Yeah. And we currently have what, 6 acres over there? Usable, something like that, Jack? 3.5, 4 acres that we could build on, but the rest is just, you can park on it. That's about it.
I think it's just shy of 4 usable, isn't it,
Okay.
Jack? Excuse me.
And what does this building sit on?
This building?
Yeah. Not everybody's real great at visualizing things when we're talking parking and buildings.
Excuse me. Other questions on police?
Yeah, I think, one of the things mentioned by Alderman Wilson is, looking at what we really do need and how we can expand it. And, where you can value engineer some things. I know some of it is required because I've seen just hearing the stories of having to go to the bathroom and getting all that gear off, and, you can't just use the urinal at Quick Trip, right? Can't have your gun just hanging there, right? So
one of the things to keep in mind too is we noticed that it was 16 million in 2 years, well, less than 2 years later, it's 18 million. These construction costs are not going down.
Yeah, price per square foot today, we calculated on one of the newer houses that went into Diamond Creek was at $275 a foot.
Yeah.
For non-commercial construction.
So we just, we obviously have identified a need. It's not a want, this is a need. Our community is growing. I did some math from 2000 to 2023. I think it was 93% growth. I don't necessarily think we'll have that much growth, but we are outgrowing our current facility, as we all know. And I think each year that we kind of kick that down the road, that cost goes up, even if we reduce the square footages. So I think it's just important that we do look at that, but I'm not going to be surprised by the time that they actually go to build it, that it's more than what we see.
And Chief just reminded me for clarification and is noted in the memo, that $18.8 million estimate is their estimate for fourth quarter 2025. So that is projecting some growth. So we'd be looking at a little less now, but if we were to move soon, fourth quarter of 2025 is going to be about as soon as we're initiating construction. So.
And what money we save will probably be spent on increases anyway. I mean,
And just a reminder also, the information, the space study with those estimates are not architectural plans. And we've not spent money on architectural plans. So that would be included as well. And so we would have to, and that's why this information now and this planning now helps us understand what we may need to be looking at and how we can design something to meet the needs into the future within a budget, but to have those plans then developed as well.
So Chuck, when's our new date for the water treatment facility to start that expansion? Or Cynthia, if you've got it.
2028 is when we're anticipating that to begin, correct? Chuck, that's the latest number.
So if we're going to move the pound, we've got to get something done before then.
yeah, Cynthia, if I might add to that, I agree with Alderman Hartman that it's a need, not a want. But I think that at this stage of the game, we also need to look at getting creative too on how we spend the funds, because my personal opinion is that there is not a appetite for increased debt to the city or increase in taxes, as we saw in the last election. So I just want to pump the brakes a little bit when we go through this. I agree with Alderman Hartman and Alderman Wilson. Let's just make sure, I think, that we look at all available opportunities that we can.
Absolutely. No, we as staff understand this is not a small undertaking, and it's not something to go into lightly. There are needs, and how we address those is important. So that's why we need to have the discussions, and they need to be ongoing. Moving on, as the mayor indicated, in 2028 is when we're looking at the expansion to the water treatment plant. In addition to using the space where the animal control or the animal pound is now, the street maintenance facility is located on that site, and where their facility is located is right where expansion will be occurring. So there is a need for that storage and that space for our maintenance functions. Excuse me. Also in 2022, we worked with a separate firm to look at those needs for both the street maintenance side as well as park maintenance. Park maintenance and streets, we have equipment that does sit outside. We have pretty limited facilities as far as staff support, restroom facilities, locker rooms, ability for people to clean up after a project, and storing those heavy pieces of equipment that cost a significant amount of money. The estimated cost in 2022 was approximately $10 million. That was a phased project that the first phase would be about $7.5 million. Because they were so cost prohibitive, staff have evaluated different alternatives to provide space for expansion and a joint maintenance facility. You all are aware we've had ongoing conversations as we were looking at the space needs for maintenance. There have been ongoing discussions with the Corps of Engineers. They have they're in the process now of restructuring some of the space at the Litton Center. And have had conversations with us about potential use of that for administrative functions for public works and parks because of the tie-in that we have to the activities out at the lake in both of those areas. As we've had ongoing discussions with the Corps, we're not certain that's a workable solution for a number of reasons. Cost is one, ongoing maintenance needs, the configuration of the space allowing the most optimal communications and work in the administrative areas of those departments. So we continue to review options of where we might be able to locate to do a scaled back project for maintenance facility to really look at that equipment storage and still provide maintenance staff restrooms, locker room, and some renovation to the existing park office so that administrative staff in the maintenance facility, our crew leaders and a support staff person could use that building. We've not worked with an architect on any of those revisions, but have gotten estimates on potential projects. So we would need to do some more work on this, but our current estimate for some type of reimagined maintenance facility would be about $5 million. That would include the engineering costs. As I noted, this would not include administrative space that we had anticipated moving. The original $10 million project included Chuck and his staff that are here in this building moving out to be co-located with the park staff. What we've looked at now is with the Litton Center probably not working, not being enough space in a maintenance facility, but we would have space if we had a public safety building or a police building, we would have space on the other side of this building available. We could renovate that and house most of our administrative functions here. The thought would be the planning department would move from the rear of the building up to the front where there's another customer service window. So you could have one-stop shopping in that area. We could have inspections in the building, inspectors working together here, but then also have parks and public works really on the police side of the building. So what we've calculated into these costs is about $5 million for the maintenance side, operation side of things, and then renovation to City Hall, which we are estimating, and actually had this conversation with a couple of you before the meeting began, $750,000 does sound like an exorbitant amount of money for renovation of half of this building. We did do renovation to the building in 2020. We did it in 2 phases, first this room and then the administrative side. And we spent, it was about $300,000 all told between the two. One was $250 and the other was $50 and some change. One of the things that we have found through that renovation and as we continue to live in the building, there are ongoing issues in the men's restroom in this building. If you come in at certain times of some days, it's not a pleasant experience. There, we think there are some expensive needs there. So part of that $750,000 includes addressing that need. So looking at public works, administrative and maintenance pieces, we're looking at $500,000. $5 million and then $750,000 for City Hall. One thing that we did discuss as staff, as we work to begin on planned upgrades at Smith's Fork, a significant cost associated with the work for the maintenance facility is the grading work and the utility work that needs to be done out there. It doesn't seem like it, but once you're out there, that is a steep piece of land and there's a significant amount of grading and those costs would be involved in that project. As we make the upgrades at Smith's Fork, those utility and some of the grade work will need to occur. So we might be able to look at leveraging some of the Parks and Recreation and stormwater sales tax funds. We want to be careful in that, but we know we're going to make some expenditures out there at Smith's Fork Park in the future as well. That is currently scheduled for 27, 28. at this point in time. As we know, all of those dates always are moving targets too. Questions on those projects?
So I know a couple of the concerns have been brought forward from even members in this audience that our street facility and our parks facilities don't have restrooms for both men and women. We don't have any place for them to change. We need to make sure we address all those items as well. I know these facilities were built a long time ago and we inherited them, but I know I've been out there talking to Matt before and their bathroom's been completely broken. So I know we lost that sewer pipe for a little while too and had to redo it. So I know these things are expensive and the numbers look big, but we also have to remember we as a government entity have to pay prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is not cheap and it has to go out to bid. And as we learned last week, fencing has gone up over 3 times, right? So pipe is probably not inexpensive either. And anytime we disturb ground with the core here, we have to upgrade stormwater, upgrade everything, right? So it's a daunting price tag, but we're also looking at $300,000 worth of dirt sitting on a place where there's going to be a bus barn soon. So if y'all want to see what $300,000 worth of dirt for compaction looks like, it's right off of 92. Just to get the site ready.
Staff on any of those, have I forgotten any details on any of the projects?
So Stephen alluded this earlier, and about our assessed valuation and just kind of the, that's something that will continue to increase, which if we didn't today take on any debt or for some time each year, that ability to borrow would go up. But I also think that as we continue to see these overwhelming projects, we've got to take some sort of action and present it to the community, the citizens, the voters, and allow them to decide. I think that Alderman Russell alluded to this last election, 5% turnout's pathetic. We had 14% turnout the last time. I hope that this April and I hope in August and November next year, we'll have a much better turnout. I think the results may have been different. I could be wrong, but if we continue to talk about this and continue to debate it, it's doing no good because costs are going to continue to go up. So I think we have a decision to make as a board moving forward to give the city the opportunity to fund these projects, because it's not going to be with our sales tax or our property tax. Our budget, Stephen, if I correct me if I'm wrong, about 56% of our budget comes from property and sales tax. So that's just, I think we need to move forward with a decision and put it on the ballot and let the voters decide. And hopefully we have more than 14% turnout in April.
I'd like to go ahead and add that Mr. Alderman Russell did comment about being creative, trying to save money here and there. And I have a feeling you guys been doing that all along. Every time we bring something up or talk about it, there's always adjustments. So I think that's an ongoing project now and even in the future. And again, like Alderman Hartman said, the money is just going to go up. We have to do something. We can be more creative a little bit on the way up, but not $25 million worth of creativity. So I think the city's doing everything they can right now, maybe tweaking a little here or there, but it's not going to be major dollars. We do need to move forward.
Hey, Chief, how many police cars do we have now? How many officers do we have? So if we had 1-for-1 on just police cars, how many more parking spots we need out back? 14? Because I got their personal vehicle and most of them, and then our parking lot's a little tight even alone. And just bringing the kids through the police station last week, having a group of a dozen elementary school kids with just a couple officers, it's pretty tight. Because that 2,700 square feet includes holding cells, evidence rooms, everything, right? That's all total,
Interview room.
not usable office space. That's everything.
Interview space,
Okay.
all of it.
So really you've got about 1,500 square feet. That's places for people to sit. And Stephen, what's our total bonding capacity again? Your last quiz before you leave.
So for that general purpose, it was almost 27.4 million.
27,364.
And then there's some in the specific use
So-
bucket, but
Yeah, and I know when we went out for our last bond issuance that was voted on prior to most people being here, most of us here came back, I guess. Our bond rating came in better, so there was a little additional funding there. But also, just because we request the cap doesn't mean we have to go out and get all those bonds, correct? We
That's-
take them as we need them.
That-
We're asking for the voters for the authority to go up to that number.
Right, there would be the authority to go up to a maximum number. One thing to keep in mind that debt issuance has a cost. So it's just
Yeah.
like any debt, there are cost of issuance, and then there's interest costs associated in that. So that $27 million, one of the things that's included in the memo, depending upon the size of the issuance, a mill levy to support general purpose debt issuance is currently estimated between about 55 and 60 cents.
And so I have a question
Uh-huh.
on that. So
Mhm.
you're saying depending on the size of the issuance, so you come up with 55 cents to 60 cents.
Mhm.
What dollar amount of issuance was that coming up to that 55
The,
cents?
the 55 cents would be close to the 25,250. I'd have to double check because we've had our financial advisors put together rough estimates. But that $25.2 million is basically what we'd be looking at the 55 cents. And then the full amount is the 60 cents. So that full amount of debt authority of 27,364. And then to remember, so that 55, if it covers estimated cost of 25,250, then there'd be cost of issuance.
But we also have to not get into an encumbrance situation or a arbitrage situation.
Arbitrage, yeah.
Where we can't spend it fast enough, right? So
Correct.
we would have to do multiple issuances regardless,
More than likely, yeah, which is what we did with the last bond issue.
correct?
And that last bond issue, Jack, was 18.5 million?
No,
No.
5.6.
I'm sorry, 18, that would, 18.5 was
5.6.
when we were talking about it, yeah, but we did it in two.
Yeah.
A
Because we
2
also
and a
had
3, yeah.
the geo bonds at the
Sorry.
same time that we didn't want to. We also had to do some sewer plant
Good.
expansion at the same time,
Yes. That, yeah.
COP and
Mhm.
geo at the same time.
Mhm.
Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong. And again, I think when we go out to the voters, these are voters that were within the city of Smithville's
The
lines.
residents of the city of
Residents of
Smithville
Sis-
that live within the city limits, correct?
You know, I think a
Mhm.
lot of times folks feel like, you know, in the school district just went through their bonding issues, so very familiar with it. That, you know, the city has 16 square miles, the district has 78, the lake takes up about 6 square miles. You know, it's roughly 21% of the city falls within the school district. So we do not have the boundary.
Approximately 20% of the school district is in the
lines.
city limits.
20% is in
Yeah,
the school
yeah,
district. Right, right,
yeah,
right.
all
Thank
of
you.
this, yeah.
Yeah, so it's sometimes confusing because when these go to the ballot, they think, well, gosh, if an individual doesn't live in the city limits, they're not voting on it. It's not going to affect
It won't affect their tax bill,
their tax
correct?
bill.
A
Also-
significant number of people in the school district don't live in the city of Smithville. I mean, I think a simplified version of what you're trying to say.
Correct.
Is that
And
correct?
also their mill levy is 12 times our mill levy. I mean, it's a significantly larger number. That's why their budget is. Yeah, they're at
Mhm.
4.84. We're at 0.3 something now. And we originally voted in a 0.75 mill levy that had to be reduced due to Hancock.
Mhm.
So, and was it, Jack, a decade that we didn't collect taxes because they thought it was a good idea? 23 years? Gotcha. That's why we're in the situation we're in where we have things that were deferred maintenance for about 20 years.
And I do want to clarify, we've had a lot of conversation about COPs and utility needs. That is a separate funding source.
Mhm.
Any of the utility work is paid for through rates. It doesn't come from any of the city general fund property or sales tax. So I want to
Yeah.
make sure that we all are on the same page on that as well.
But police station, streets, sidewalks,
Those are
any of those
general fund
things,
type
yeah.
needs.
And our mill levy was passed when chief started, when there was how many officers? Before that, but when we built this when we built the city hall, we had 2 officers on duty at a shift. One? 86,
About 2 years before I started. When I started, there were 9 officers.
9. But when we built the building, we had a couple on duty at a time,
Probably one at a time.
one at a time.
Yeah.
So if 2,700 square feet worked for one or two at a time.
I'm gonna say, I can understand what all we're talking about here, about how small our mill rate is compared to the tax bill. But I can sit here as an individual or community and I look at my total tax bill. So that's a hard pill to
Mhm.
swallow.
Abs-
Any increase at all is a
absolutely.
very, very hard pill to
That-
swallow.
Absolutely.
I think the one thing, we've reduced it multiple times more because the commercial has grown, right? The bucket is filled with commercial more than it used to be, which is assessed at 32%.
I can understand that, but then when your home value goes up itself,
Yep.
it
Still
still
has
goes
an
up.
impact.
And
Absolutely.
it's, I struggle with that
Mhm.
setting
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely.
And
Completely
then
understand
add
that.
on top of that, a 15% increase year over year and projected for 2 or 3 more years of increase in water and sewer bill. It's I guess the point is it's in the current time today with rising interest rates, it's all of it put together is, I don't know if the other aldermen have it, but I'm sure they do, but that's a lot of my calls that I received is about that. And, you know, I understand it. We go to retreat. So I just think it's just, I know you guys are doing what you can, but I think that whatever we can do on
Yeah,
some of this.
Completely understand. It's that it does not fall on deaf ears and staff recognizes that. You know, we recognize those are costs that are passed on to the residents. The one thing that we struggle with as well is as we put our budget together, the same thing that are affecting residents are affecting us. And if we could cut those costs, we'd love to, but our utility bills aren't going down either. The cost of projects, as we said in here on twice a month, we are talking about projects and how they're going up. We understand, and it is a struggle, and it's frustrating to us to see those costs go from 16 to $18 million in the span of a short period of time, and you know, trying to cut back wherever we can. In regular session, I will talk, you know, we have had conversations about the project on North Bridge. And we have been able to leverage other funding sources. And we got some good news on what we saw as an overage there. And there are funds available for certain things. There are not funds available for others. Typically outside funding for construction of a public safety facility, you don't hear it most of the time. I mean, that is a community funded project. I don't know of grants available for those type projects. The grants are available for other public safety needs. But those main ongoing operations and facilities, there's just not a lot of other sources to draw from.
Yeah, I'm looking at the fire district's levy that they just put into effect August of 2020, correct? This one is on the ballot, 2021, one of those.
21, I
Yeah.
want to say is.
So they're
Is that right?
they're currently 34 cents higher than the city, 34 mils. To be able to staff the additional fire station.
And I think one thing to keep in mind also, staff is not looking for a decision from the board tonight. We want to make sure that there's information out there to get a feel from the board of what additional information we can provide to you all to help in making those decisions. We wanted to get the information to you just so that you have that information to be able to continue to consider those deliberations. The one thing that we always have to keep in mind is anytime we want to go to take a question on the ballot, there's a pretty significant amount of lead time. If we were to look at something for a ballot issue for April of this year, it would be end of
Well, next year.
January. Did I say April? Next year. I'm sorry. I'm already thinking 24. 23 is over, isn't it? It feels
Well-
that way. It feels that way. So a April 24 ballot would have to be certified the end of January. An August ballot is, I believe, a May timeframe, and a November ballot is an April timeframe. August, it's that other A word. My brain is not firing. Sorry. So January, May and August are those timeframes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we don't need a decision from the board tonight. We just want to know that their staff continues to look at ways to be able to address this as well. And to find out if there are specific things that you all would like us to look into to be able to provide additional or better information to make decisions.
Yeah. And I will, I did notice Clay County got tax bills out just recently, so you guys can go review your tax bills. I went and checked mine. And look at the dollar amount, what that would equate to. And also look at, what you're paying for the library. And if you're using those services and much you use city services, it's about the same amount that you're paying. So that's what you really have to sit down and think about is it worth an extra $150 a year to get the police station going? $150
150 a year.
Yep. So
So that's one thing. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount of money.
Right.
And it is all paid at one time. If you think of it over a 12-month period of time, it breaks down to a different factor.
okay, thanks for does anybody need any additional info from staff? You guys can always email Bidwell and ask if you need anything, but
Okay.
I think we've gotten lots of numbers. Stephen, any other presentations you want to give before you leave?
Not unless you need anything else from me.
We might. Other duties as assigned, remember?
He's still got a few days, Mayor, next item then,
Are we ready to move on?
if,
Everybody? Cool. Yes.
then I'll
Number
call
4.
on Jack to provide some information.
Do we want to do public comment first? All right,
Okay.
We do have a public
Okay.
comment card, which, okay. Rachel Porter, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. If you need more time, please let me know.
Hi, my name is Rachel Porter. I live at 639 South Commercial Avenue. Currently, my house is a mess. I have been cited. I am working to get it taken care of. We had a bunch of property come to us when Holloway's located next to Quick Trip closed. My fiance was displaced from work. We were given a bunch of furniture to continue for him to be able to make a living with it. And we have been trying to have storage for it. He was displaced from work. I've been trying to keep up with storage units. I know it's a nuisance. I know it's not a pretty sight to see. We are trying to get it all taken care of as quickly as possible. There were a few slowdowns with some deaths in the family that have taken time away from being able to work on that. So I just wanted to let you guys know that it is being taken care of. We are working as quickly as possible to get the nuisance picked up. We did have a dumpster donated to us for a couple of weeks that we did use as well, and trying to get another dumpster. Right now we're working on trying to get another one, but the funds just aren't there right now with keeping up with utilities and everything like that. But that's something that I felt that everyone needed to know. It's not like we're just sitting on it, don't care. We are working on trying to get it taken care of as quickly as possible. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
I'll call on Jack Hendricks to provide a staff report on review of nuisance information.
Good evening. You had a memo in your packet that kind of laid out generally where we're at and what we're looking at. State of Missouri and Jeff City has passed several changes over the last year, 2, 3 years. I'm not certain exactly how. It's about every year they make changes to the code enforcement process. So I think it's best to describe what we do currently and then what we're going to need to do based on some of these changes. And currently, for an abatement scenario, which is mowing grass or removing trash or that kind of stuff, the process is the violations called in or identified by the code enforcement. Then an inspection is completed and documented. And then we send out a notice of violation, usually given 10 days to get it cleaned up. And there's a reinspection on day 11. They come back out and look at it then. If it still is in violation, then an abatement notice goes out that they have 5 days to get it done, or the city can come in and mow the grass or collect the trash and be done with it. And a ticket can be issued at that time once the abatement's ready. We've had very few abatement cases other than mowing grass, usually because it's foreclosure or whatever else. I've been here 16 years and we've had, in the last 10, we've had 1, 2, 3 board ups of buildings. And one of those board ups also included taking a bunch of trash off the property. Generally, we don't have those kind of abatements, it's mowing. So that's kind of the procedure, a 10-day notice, 5-day notice, we go forward. There are new stuff that we're going to have to do. One of the things is when you've got a voluminous amount of trash, it changes the game substantially. So we met with the city attorneys, the city prosecutor, the police chief, police clerk, code enforcement, and myself. Code enforcement officer Kiowa and myself met so that we can kind of figure out what we can do to clean this process up, to make it move quicker in accordance with state law. One of the things we did, and that was have our attorney, John Reddick, craft up a rough draft of what an abatement ordinance would look like. It would be much more detailed. We have one now that applies for dangerous buildings, for example, or dangerous premises. There are processes in place for that. This would broaden that a little bit to incorporate an official process with specific timelines, when the notice goes out. And basically the notices all stay the same until you get to the point of an abatement. And the abatements when you go on the property and mow it, or go on the property to remove the trash. He's proposing a process that would be a 10-day notice of hearing. So as soon as the 10 days have elapsed, they haven't cleaned it up or mowed the grass, then they get a second letter that says you have a hearing in 10 days to explain why this shouldn't be abated by the city. So you set up the hearing process. That hearing gets set 10 days later. Once that hearing happens, if the person doesn't show up, the findings will obviously be that the grass is taller than 7 inches or whatever. And that finding would be that an abatement's necessary. If there's no evidence to say why an abatement isn't necessary, it would occur. There would be an order issued. And then the order that would be issued would be subject to an appeal by that person as well, all in compliance with the Missouri Administrative Procedure Act. The purpose of tonight is to get some dialogue as to who or what would be the process for it. So the abatement letter goes out. There's a show cause hearing. Who would be the party or the entity that would you think would be the best person or group to handle that show cause? At a show cause, evidence is presented that here's the nuisance, the pictures or whatever else it is. And then the offending party would then have the ability to say, here's what's going on. Here's why it shouldn't happen. And then there's an order issued one way or the other based on that. Attorney's recommendation is that that person either be the development director, city administrator, somebody at the staff level to do that. If that order's issued and the person has the ability to file an appeal of that order, his recommendation then is that it would be the city administrator or the board or any other entity you all wanted to name as to be the person to process that appeal. Keeping in mind that the timeframes are the number one complaint we get from everybody but the people that get the notices. It's taking too long. So that time frame will extend for the abatement where you actually get something mowed, or you have to pick the stuff up. That process would extend, but the ordinance, and he's got it from other communities that have done the same thing, they put in a provision as well that allows one notice at the beginning of the year thereafter. So if they don't mow their grass, 2 weeks later, 5 weeks later, you go back and it's up again, you don't have to start from scratch. You're already at, you go mow it. No further notices are required. They've already went through the process. They've already had the opportunity for an appeal. And if they're not mowing it, they're still not mowing it. Same thing with if they keep piling trash, it gets cleaned up once. 2 weeks later, you go back and it's still, there's more stuff there. Same thing. So you don't have to do that. So it shortens up some processes, but extends the first process a bit. So really, the questions for you are who should be the ones handling that first level of the show cause, seeing the evidence, listening to the offending party's reasons for hold off on doing it, and then going from there.
Jack, I have a question for you. Right, what happens right now? It's the code, one of your people, right? That right now would go and if someone's parked on gravel and they shouldn't be, or whatever, they issue a fine right now, right?
Well, no, that we don't issue fines, judges do. We issue tickets.
Okay, tickets.
Yeah, just like a
Okay.
police officer, we'd issue a ticket and then a judge would have to take it through that process. So in that scenario, for example, that's a scenario that I don't think we would ever get to an abatement. We're focusing on the abatement, which is the getting rid of the problem. So I don't think there'd ever be a scenario where the city'd go in a parking scenario and put in gravel and then bill them for it. There would be a scenario, or could be a scenario, where we would mow, we would remove trash, that kind of stuff. Stuff that we can do. Other aspects would be boarding up a vacant building that's got all the windows busted out and kids are getting in it to secure the building.
Is this type of abatement board put together in any other city, or is this newfound territory?
Well, other cities have already done it. Other cities haven't done it yet. And this is to get us, according to our attorney, this will get us up to current versions of what the state has changed. If they change them again next year, we may have to come back. It's just whatever, we're looking at it like it's the constitutional provisions, the statutory provisions, whatever they are, that put limits on the ability to clean up, mow the grass, whatever those happen to be. We just need to follow the state laws. And our current attorney, John, is a very good attorney at, here are the rules, make sure you follow these rules. So it makes it easier to understand for not only city staff or you all, if you're an appeal party, but the citizens. They know what they've got to do. It makes it easier.
So right now you're looking for a person or a position other than the code enforcement officer.
Well, I don't think the code enforcement
No,
officer
should be
should be the
separate.
person that makes the,
See, I don't know about the rest of the board. I don't know all the duties of the staff we have right now. I feel if we go to our city administrator, have them evaluate everybody's availability or education level and see what's best, as well as look what the other cities are doing.
so and I appreciate that. There are two levels that we're talking about. So there's the show cause hearing and then there's an appeal.
Yeah, I think the appeal should come to us with, like other appeals do already.
Yeah, I think appeals should finalize here, but I do believe in show cause, there should be either a CIT officer involved or you know what a CIT officer is.
CIT. no.
Okay, it's crisis intervention team
Oh,
member,
okay.
which specializes in mental health
issues.
We have quite a few on our department.
Right.
So
I think most of our department is. So I think one of those people should be assigned to that type of show cause hearing. In case there is mental health issues at play and or some kind of social worker that listens to this issue, that has even more community outreach to help maybe get this type of problem solved.
Jack, the 52 tickets that were issued on this property, that was your code enforcement person that
Yes.
issued?
Yeah.
Okay,
59 cases that are at
It's
Clay
59,
County right
yeah.
now.
And that-
59.
Those are the ones that are scheduled for trial. They started in 2022.
okay. And they're that ongoing right now for trial, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, yeah. There's
scheduled.
more, and there's more accumulating.
Okay, and your person that issued the tickets, they have to go to court as well right now?
Sure.
Okay, when that comes to trial, is that correct?
Yes. Even if it doesn't come to trial, if it's scheduled for trial, they have to show up every time.
Okay,
So
okay.
they've been going to court now for 16 months on this case.
So we need to more or less establish the rough outline of this
An
abatement
procedure, yes. And it's-
procedure for the show cause, and then we're pretty much decided that once that's whatever the recommendation is of show cause comes here for final disposition.
And to clarify, show cause is the only decision is whether or not that the grass should be mowed or whether
By
or
the
not
city or
trash-
by,
Yeah, whether the city should do the abatement. So whether the grass should be mowed, whether the trash should be picked up by the city. The actual, whether it's a violation or again, any of those extra issues, those are the ones that always go to a judge, a Missouri certified judge.
there's nothing before that show cause hearing.
No, and the show cause is
So it's-
only for abatement.
Well,
It's
there's a
not-
ticket still.
Yeah,
mean,
the
there's still
tickets
the-
are still out there.
There's still a warrant. Usually she does a door hanger warning first and then ticket and then.
Yeah. So you
Certified
get the-
letter
You
and
get the notice. It's a little blue thing that says this is not a ticket, not a citation. It's, hey, your grass is tall. You probably ought to mow it before we
Yeah.
have to do.
and if it's
something.
rained for 14 days straight, we,
Yeah. Some of those things are just
Understand it.
natural.
Yeah.
That she's not going to issue you an abatement if it's been raining for the last 15 days and you couldn't mow it. There's nobody could mow it. Even if it was situated where the city was going to do an abatement, our contractor won't mow it when it's that bad either. They can't. They don't want to tear everything up. They just want to get the grass cut. So some of that reasonableness is brought into it simply because you can't mow it. If it's got to paint your house because all the paint's flaking off. Same thing. If it's raining all the time or it's freezing outside, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get that abatement requirement. It just won't happen because it can't happen.
but we don't want to get in this situation of Platte Woods where they replace one board every 6 months because they know they can get another permit to replace the next board and the next board. And it's been going on for 18 years.
So to me, this is like just the last step. You've done everything else, you've tried, and it just hasn't been resolved.
And
Correct.
It's two things. It gives us clear direction and steps on how to get to an abatement. And it brings us up to current state law standards from August 28th.
Jack, in this scenario, or going forward, the trash we've been talking about here, would the city would have cleaned it up, something, whatever the judge ordered? Is that the way I hear that? Whatever the city would, it wouldn't be there right now. Is that what it would have been resolved, right?
Well, in this scenario, it's separate from what the judge orders. The judge orders fines.
Okay,
Um,
okay. But I saw in here that said that the weeds or trash was removed by the city and billed to the person.
Yeah.
So it would have been removed, right?
If we went through the process and went to the abatement, yes.
Right.
It's just this, in a scenario like that, we would be talking about probably coming here to the board to get a budget amendment, because it would be, I'm
It'd
sure it'd
be-
be more than It'd be several $1,000s at least.
And I think Alderman Russell, if this answers your question, and Jack, correct me. This would give us a mechanism that we don't have right now, a tool that we don't have right now. Right now, we work through the judicial system. This gives us a process through our code and our nuisance code to allow us to be able to do that.
Got it.
We have
There may be
limited-
some situations where somebody inherits a property, they don't even live here and they don't have any ability to clean it up.
Yeah.
I mean, they might not know a local person to come clean it up for them and
And
it gets
I will
abated.
clarify one thing. The city does have some abatement
Yeah.
procedures in place. Nothing as comprehensive as this, that here's the procedure, sets up a specific hearing date, all those things. Gives the person the opportunity to say, hey, I can't come to it because I live in California, but my grandmother died and I just got this house. Haven't even had a chance to hire somebody to do it. Can you hold off on abatement? That would be one of those scenarios where it would be a good way to consider, yeah, we will give you 30 days to resolve it. And then do the abatement. But the abatement could be by state law, no shorter than 5 days from the hearing.
Reading this and with what Alderman Yulidol asked about the CIT being involved, could this be revamped that maybe it's the development director that takes those first steps in that abatement and then work with the CIT officer through this process?
That
To
would-
come before it came to whoever's going to make the final decision, or have them
Well,
interview?
ultimately,
How would could that be possible?
in bringing them in, it's ultimately a scenario where, as there are several officers, if someone comes in that looks like they're in distress, and if it was on me, for example, if I'm the show cause officer, if someone comes in that seems to be in distress, my first thing is going to be get somebody that knows that stuff, not,
But I wonder if there's times you may not know that.
well.
So
yeah.
should we put two people, like the development director and a CIT officer
Sure.
to do that?
And ultimately, that's the sliding scale. Somebody hadn't mowed their grass. Do we need to go to the CIT? Or if we have someone, so obviously there are, I've seen them here in town in the past, mental illness associated with hoarding. That happens. In addition to the CIT, if they're of age 65 or older, you can get senior services involved. Sometimes the public administrator needs to get involved if those are the issues. So there are a lot of those things, how you want to address them. That's really the difficult part.
I think if you can bring us some recommendations and just have this as the appeal board, if everyone is in agreement on that. Okay. I think does that get you what you need?
It gets me the
Cool.
next step.
Next step.
We'll get something. I don't know if it'll be, and Cynthia and I'll discuss it tomorrow as to whether we need to bring in an ordinance with some concepts or bring it back for another work session or what.
Got a holiday this week. You don't need to worry about it. Any other questions for Jack? Thank you. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Go ahead and adjourn the work session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning the work session, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. We'll just keep the Zoom going and we'll move right into the regular session. Linda, do you need to change anything or can we keep it recording? Thank you. Call the Board of Aldermen regular session to order. Please stand, and Mr. Larson, can you lead us in the pledge since it's your last meeting? States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item, committee reports, planning and zoning.
Yes, I'm looking here. When we met, we didn't have a whole lot on our agenda other than we had a public hearing and a rezoning of 17 lots in the Second Creek Meadows, which is on our agenda tonight. Otherwise, we've got commercial construction going on, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah, if you didn't go by McBee's this week, they shredded a lot of hay bales on Sunday. You guys missed that one. Yeah, they got railings up and vacuums up and everything overnight, it seemed like. And then trusses got delivered for Fairview Crossing today and studs were going vertical earlier today, so a lot going on. City Administrator's report, Ms. Wagner.
Mayor and members of the board, I'd like to call attention to a couple of items here. I alluded to these earlier in the work session. Want to recognize staff on their work in bringing home a grant for the OK Trail Phase 1. As we have indicated, we applied for a grant through Missouri Natural Resources for the first phase of the OK Trail, which is what we used to call the old Diamond Crest Trail, correct? So that trail on the northern end of the community, looking at a total grant of about $164,000. So we just received official word last week on that. Matt, as well as Chuck and Myra, and I think Gina was even involved in that one. Gina was not involved in that one. Chuck's not going to give any credit where she was involved in the first one. Thank you. Okay. But okay. That didn't get it. Wow. Okay.
That's what happens when you leave Chuck's team.
Apparently. But really excited to be able to get that funding and to be able to move forward on that project. Then, as I alluded to, we also, we've had ongoing conversation with regard to the phase 3 of streetscape and have significant information in the city administrator's report that is included in the agenda, but Chuck was able to provide additional information to Mark, who had some additional projects that weren't able to be funded this year, actually weren't able to be completed. So they had some surplus revenues. Surplus is probably a strong word for that, but they had some excess revenues for this year to be able to use. And Chuck was able to leverage an additional $1 million for the streetscape project. So we'll be able to do the full project. We won't have to reduce scope as significantly as we thought. We will have to rebid that project, however. And so Chuck has spent a pretty significant amount of time with HDR looking at re-engineering on that because there are some scope changes, but he's working on that. And we anticipate that going out to bid after the first of the year, February-ish. Let's see. While Chuck was at Mark, we did receive information that, if you'll recall, part of our overlay program this year, there were some ARPA funds that were being administered through Mark for road improvements throughout the county. And they also, the bid on that came in a bit lower than what was anticipated. So there was additional funding to be able to be allocated there. So we will not have to use any of our resources for the projects that were identified on that. So we got additional funding from Mark for those. Then there's information update in the packet on a program offered by Parks and Recreation a couple of weeks ago. Very successful, great pictures. And we plan to do a Parent and Me painting class again after the first of the year. This past weekend is not in the packet, but Saturday we hosted a trash collection event. Myra Toothman and Kiowa Norton worked together to get dumpsters and opened up for the community to bring trash. We had 62 trucks come through, 2.5 dumpsters full of, were filled. There were a lot of bulky items. Myra said she counted no less than a dozen mattresses. There were couches and appliances. So that was a success. Myra and Kia were giddy over that success. They were excited to be able to put that together. That's something that they identified and worked through. So special thanks to them for working on that and city staff that volunteered to provide assistance in that. And I do want to remind the board and the public that City Hall will be closed Thursday and Friday in observance of Thanksgiving, and wish you and all of your families a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Wagner?
Mayor, just Cynthia, part of this extra collection was a contract negotiation with the trash company, correct?
Chuck, I'm
No.
gonna actually,
This is one of
Extra? This is something.
this was our code
Public Works-
enforcement
There's-
officer's dream
oh,
project.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, this is, it was an extra, we provided those, but that's not part of the contract.
Okay, good,
So, yeah,
good. I'm just gonna have,
the
so that was
contract
a
added an additional,
contract added.
Yeah, we have
So,
an
yeah.
extra bulk, we have an extra curbside.
But
correct.
this was.
but
okay,
this was
very good,
drop off.
Very
This
good.
was
So,
something
yeah.
that we were doing household hazardous waste. Keo was very excited about pulling this together,
Mhm.
giving the community an opportunity to drop off some trash at a time that wasn't curbside, and
Mhm.
we had a lot of people show up, so
Yeah,
it was
well,
nice.
Yeah.
Chuck, please tell her thank you.
Jack.
for Jack.
Jack
too.
for Kiowa and
Jack
Chuck for
Kiowa.
Myra.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Moving on to number 6. Alderman Yulidol.
Motion to approve bill number 3014-23, creation of a Fairview Crossing CID fund, second reading.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Hartman,
Aye.
Alderman Yulidol,
Aye.
Alderman Atkins,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Shipley,
Aye.
Alderman Russell,
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Ms. Wagner, please read the bill.
An ordinance creating the Fairview Crossing CID Financial Fund to account for the receipt of and expenditures from that allocation separate from any other monies.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 7. This has 2 readings. Alderman Yulidol.
Motion to approve bill number 3016-23, fiscal year 2024 budget amendment. Number 1, emergency ordinance sponsored by Mayor Boley. First reading.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Yulidol,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Atkins,
Aye.
Alderman Shipley,
Aye.
Alderman Russell,
Aye.
Alderman Hartman,
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Ms. Wagner, please read the bill.
An ordinance amending the fiscal year 2024 operating budget to add $757,000 to the expenditure budget and $25,000 to the revenue budget.
Thank you. Same item, second reading. Alderman Yulidol.
Motion to approve bill number 3016-23, fiscal year 2024 budget amendment number 1, emergency ordinance sponsored by Mayor Boley. Second reading.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Yulidol,
Aye.
Alderman Russell,
Aye.
Alderman Hartman,
Aye.
Alderman Shipley,
Aye.
Alderman Atkins,
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Ms. Wagner, please read the bill.
An ordinance amending the fiscal year 2024 operating budget to add $757,000 to the expenditure budget and $25,000 to the revenue budget.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 8. It also has 2 readings. Alderman Yulidol.
Motion to approve bill number 3017-23, rezoning northeast corner of Second Creek and Loman Road, emergency ordinance sponsored by Mayor Boley. First reading.
Thank you. We do have one public comment, Roberta Lohman.
Mayor, I would like to recuse myself at this time.
Thank you. Roberta?
I'll second.
Oh, sorry, do I have a second? Thank you. Yeah, Dan got me there.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I would like to,
1 second. There you go.
is that okay? Okay. I would just like to talk about what was in the agenda,
Ro-
which was saying.
Roberta, before you start, could you say your name, which was saying.
Roberta,
before you start, could you say your name and your address, please?
I'm sorry,
That's
my
right.
name's Roberta Loman, 16251 Loman Road, Smithville. And I would like to address the background portion of the agenda, which said the property is currently R1B and R3, and it is looking to be rezoned. Identified as the Second Creek Meadows, created in March of 23. Following that approval, legal actions were filed and the project stopped. Legal actions were not filed in March of 23. It was January. So I would like to note that that is incorrect. And following that approval, legal actions were filed and the project stopped. A new purchaser seeking to change the multifamily to single family in an effort to settle the pending lawsuit. I would just like to go on the record and clarify that the lawsuit was filed prior to the date that's in here at 1/26 of 23 is when it was filed. And secondly, although that is one of the key components of the lawsuit, I am appreciative that it's going to go back to R1. Don't get me wrong. As per my sales contract, and I'm really sorry that Alderman Hartman has gone, but there are other components to the settlement of the lawsuit for a dismissal, or it's not contingent upon this rezoning. So I just want to make that clear. Also, Mr. and Mrs. Hadley, as I spoke to them, one of the concerns, and it might be planning and zoning, I'm not sure if I'm correct here, but they are wondering what is the elevation for the new development, because their concern is not the flow of the water, but the displacement of the water. So those were my concerns tonight. And I was really wanting to clarify that it was not after March of 23, it was before. And also the settlement of the lawsuit is not contingent upon the rezoning of it. Although I am telling you, I am so appreciative, it would go to the R1. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll remind the board that we are here to vote on an application submitted by the landowner, not to discuss court cases. Those are for the court system to take care of. Any discussion on this item?
Mayor, I have just a kind of a clarification. If based on the requested change of date, do we need to amend this before it's signed by?
I don't think that
Mayor?
information is in the
That's a staff
ordinance.
report. It's not in the ordinance. The ordinance is what you'll be voting on. That's a staff report that provides ancillary information or background information to
Okay.
the ordinance. The ordinance is the actual action.
Jack, I'm guessing you got that information from the Clay County court system records?
There were filings involved, not the actual, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Clay County may have a mistake as well. but Okay. Yeah, it's not in the ordinance. It's not part of what we're voting on.
Okay, thank you.
It's like saying the weather was 72 degrees when we did it. It's doesn't make the ordinance any different. Any other discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Atkins,
Aye.
Alderman Russell,
Aye.
Alderman Shipley,
Aye.
Alderman Yulado.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
5-0.
Motion carries. Ms. Wagner, please read the bill.
An ordinance changing the zoning classifications or districts of certain lands located in the city of Smithville, Missouri.
Thank you. Second reading, Alderman Yulidol.
Motion to approve bill number 3017-23, rezoning northeast corner of Second Creek and Loman Road. Emergency ordinance sponsored by Mayor Boley. Second reading.
Thank you. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Shipley,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Atkins,
Aye.
Alderman Russell.
Aye.
Alderman Yulado.
Aye.
5-0.
Motion carries. Ms. Wagner, please read the bill.
An ordinance changing the zoning classifications or districts of certain lands located in the city of Smithville, Missouri.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. I don't see any cards, correct? Any new business? I will, as Ms. Wagner goes to get Alderman Hartman, I will echo her comments and others. Y'all enjoy your holiday. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate everyone that's going to be working those days, our police officers, firefighters, nurses, doctors, all those fun people. You back? Welcome back. Thank you. Well, all right. Do you have any new business? Okay. Well, everyone enjoy their holiday. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Stand adjourned.
You guys have a good Thanksgiving.